Imagine a world where no one counts the hours. There are no alarms, no calendars, no clocks ticking on the wall. The sun rises, moves across the sky, and sets. The moon appears, changes shape, and vanishes. The seasons come and go, bringing heat, cold, rain, and hunger. And somewhere, a human being looks at the shadow of a stick on the ground and thinks, that means something. That person was the first timekeeper. They had no gears, no numbers, no words for minute or hour. But they understood that the world moved in patterns. And if you could read those patterns, you could survive. This is how early humans kept time before clocks, using nothing but light, bone, fire, and the sky itself. The oldest timekeeping device in human history was not a machine. It was a stick. A single straight branch pushed into the earth. Early humans noticed that the shadow of that stick moved across the ground as the day passed. In the morning, the shadow stretched long and cold to the west. At midday, it shrank to a dark puddle beneath the stick. By evening, it stretched again, this time to the east. The stick was a sundial, and it worked everywhere, on a patch of dirt, on a flat rock, on the snow. The shadow stick did more than mark the hours. It marked the seasons. In summer, the midday shadow was short because the sun was high. In winter, the same stick cast a long, pale shadow even at noon. Early humans who watched the stick knew when the days were getting longer and warmer. They knew when to plant seeds, when to move camp, when the migrating herds would return. The first calendar was a shadow, and it was free. But the shadow stick was useless at night, so early humans turned to the moon. The moon is a clock that resets every 29 days. It is visible everywhere, impossible to ignore. Early humans tracked its phases: the crescent, the half, the full, the dying sliver. And they carved that knowledge into bone. The most famous example is the Ishango bone, found in the Democratic Republic of Congo and dated to over 20,000 years ago. It is a baboon fibula covered in precise notches, grouped in patterns that match lunar cycles. Some archaeologists believe the notches also mark the menstrual cycle, suggesting that women may have been the first astronomers, tracking their own bodies in relation to the moon. Another artifact, the Blanchard bone from France, is a piece of eagle bone carved with tiny pits that spiral around the shaft, counting the days from new moon to full moon. These were not decorations. They were calendars. They allowed early humans to predict when the moon would light their hunts and when the tides would be low enough to cross a reef. But the most intimate clock was the one inside every human body. Early humans did not need a device to tell them they were hungry, tired, or cold. Their bodies told them. Hunger was a daily rhythm. Sleep was a daily rhythm. The need to urinate was a daily rhythm. The body is a chemical clock, and it runs on a cycle that is roughly 24 hours, what we now call the circadian rhythm. Early humans rose with the sun because their bodies released cortisol at dawn. They grew sleepy after dark because their brains produced melatonin in the absence of light. They did not understand the chemistry, but they obeyed the rhythm. Pregnant women tracked the passing months by the swelling of their bellies. Nursing mothers knew their babies needed milk at regular intervals. The body kept time for them, and they listened. Fire was another clock. A campfire burns at a predictable rate. A dried log of a certain size would last an hour. A bundle of dried grass would last minutes. Early humans who kept watch through the night measured their shifts by the fire. "I will guard until that branch falls in two," one sentinel would say. "Then you will take over until the coals turn gray." The fire was a ticking clock, crackling its way through the dark hours. And it was never wrong. Candles, invented much later, worked on the same principle. But the idea of measuring time by burning something began in the Paleolithic, long before wax and wick. A burning stick, a smoldering rope of twisted bark, a bowl of oil with a floating wick. All of these were clocks that counted down the night. In some cultures, knotted cords were dipped in resin and burned one knot at a time, a slow fuse that marked the passing of the hours. For longer time spans, early humans looked to the sky. They learned to recognize the constellations. Not as mythology yet, but as a map. When a particular star appeared just above the horizon at dusk, the salmon would run. When another star vanished, the snow would come. The Pleiades, A tight cluster of stars visible in both hemispheres was used by cultures across the world to mark the start and end of the growing season. The Australian Aborigines, whose traditions stretch back at least 65,000 years, used the rising of certain stars to signal when emu eggs would be available. The sun itself was the great clock of the year. The summer solstice, the longest day, was recognized by early humans across Europe who built monuments aligned to its rising and setting. Stonehenge is the most famous, but there are hundreds of smaller sites. A simple stone circle, a notch in a hill, a gap between two trees, all of them aligned to the solstice sun. The people who built these markers had no writing, no mathematics, no telescopes. They had only patience, observation, and a need to know when the world would turn warm again. And then, around 5,000 years ago, someone looked at a shadow stick and thought, I can make this better. The Egyptians refined the gnomon into the obelisk, a towering stone needle that cast a precise shadow across a plaza. The Babylonians divided the day into 24 hours because they counted in 60s, a system that still rules our clocks today. The Greeks invented the clepsydra, the water clock, which dripped at a steady rate and could measure time even at night. The Chinese built incense clocks that burned through scented trails, marking the hours with different perfumes. The mechanical clock, the digital watch, the atomic clock. All of them trace their lineage back to a stick in the ground and a human mind that noticed its shadow. The next time you check your phone for the time, remember the notches on a baboon bone. Remember the shadow creeping across the dirt. Remember the sentinel watching the fire die, the mother counting the moons of her pregnancy, the hunter waiting for a star to rise over the mountain. Timekeeping did not begin with gears. It began with attention. It began with the oldest human habit of all, paying close attention to the world because your life depended on it. If you lived 50,000 years ago, how would you have kept track of the days? Would you count the moons, watch the fire, or just let your body tell you? Tell me below.